After Pope Leo XIV was elected the new pope on May 8, 2025, genealogists around the world began researching his family tree. It was quickly uncovered by genealogist Jari Honore that the pope had Creole roots on his maternal side, although the pope's paternal side was a much bigger mystery, stumping genealogists all around the world. Hello everybody, I am Jarrett Ross, the GeneaVlogger, and on today's video we will be discussing Pope Leo XIV's paternal grandfather. Pope Leo XIV was born Robert Francis Prevost, the son of Louis Prevost and Mildred Agnes Martinez. Louis's birth record from 1920 in Chicago showed his parents' names as Jean Lanty Prevost and Suzanne Louise Marie Faber. But then there's this massive gap of records missing that we would expect to typically find for families at this time. The next record we're able to find on the family isn't until 1940 with the World War II draft registration of John Prevost, the older brother of Louis, and literally the Pope's uncle. Even more, nothing could be found on the family before the birth of John Prevost in 1917 in Lackawanna County, New York. It's as if the family popped up out of nowhere. Two separate teams of genealogists dove deep into the research, and both came back with the same unexpected conclusion. The Pope's paternal grandfather had two identities. One of these teams was a large group of genealogists from the Genealogy Discord server, which was made up of a wide variety of researchers from young high school students to certified professional genealogists. The other team included three highly experienced genealogists from Ancestry's Pro-Genealogist division, the division of Ancestry where you can hire professional genealogists for research services. And when each team really started to get going with the research, they both noticed a lot of interesting things with the family. What they had found was that John Prevost, the paternal grandfather of Pope Leo XIV, had changed his name from Salvatore Giovanni Rigatano.
Afterwards, we really couldn't find anything about John Prevost in the records at all. Like, there was nothing for him after a certain point. So that was a little suspicious for us because you don't just disappear, especially in that time period. You don't disappear. Big kind of breakthrough was the newspaper records with the Prevost Rigatano School of Music. That got us thinking, is this an associate? Is this the same guy? What's going on here? Did eventually find a World War I draft record for Rigatano, and we realized that the birth dates were the same. So that was a pretty big coincidence that we couldn't let go. So the fan research continued, and then we found the record of the scandal.
I started researching the grandfather, John Prevost, and I pretty quickly, like was said about Discord, I pretty quickly realized this doesn't line up with what you normally see for a family in the mid-1900s. They're in the 1950 census, but it's really hard to find anything about them before that. They're missing apparently from 1920, 1930, 1940. There's just something about this that is not working. When you've done a lot of this kind of research, that you get that feeling that there's something off here. We pretty quickly found the entries for John and Suzanne in the alien registration database and ordered those.
It seemed that this name change was tied to a scandal that had even led to the arrest of the Pope's paternal grandparents. Born on the northern coast of Sicily in 1876 to Santi Rigatano and Maria Aliotto, he was the youngest of 10 children. In 1895, at the age of 18, he received his diploma in languages, history, and mathematics, followed by working with the civil courts in Italy teaching language. In 1903, Salvatore immigrated to the United States, making his way from New York, then to Quincy, Illinois, which is a town on the border of Illinois and Iowa, where he had two sisters living already. He continued his work teaching languages and building a really prominent career for himself in Illinois and throughout the Midwest. In early 1908, John became engaged to a woman named Frances Christ, a piano teacher at the Quincy Conservatory of Music where Giovanni was also teaching. In early March 1908, Frances would begin suffering what seemed to be a mild case of peritonitis, but it would prove deadly and Frances would pass away on the 14th of March, 1908. Giovanni would eventually meet Daisy Hughes, a stenographer from Iowa, and they would marry on the 14th of April, 1914 in Chicago. But just a few years later, in 1917, Daisy would accuse Giovanni of adultery with a woman named Suzanne Fontaine, a French woman who also taught languages. After Daisy made a sworn statement, Giovanni was arrested in Quincy, and an arrest warrant was also issued for Suzanne Fontaine. Suzanne was in Chicago when she heard about the arrest, but once she heard about it, she came down to Quincy and had her trunk shipped down as well, having her trunk shipped down to the house of Giovanni's sister, Victoria Cento. The police learned about the trunk being shipped to the house in Quincy, so they went to the Cento house to arrest Suzanne. Funny enough, while being arrested, Suzanne actually pretended not to know English. The scandal broke publicly and was reported in multiple newspaper articles throughout March 1917. Victoria's husband, Vincent Cento, claimed the accusations from Daisy were false. Vincent went even further to say that he had known Suzanne since she was a child, and even spoke of knowing her family back in Italy extremely well. Only problem with that is Vincent was lying. Even more, Susanna was pregnant with Giovanni's child. Giovanni and Susanna were released on bail and slated for a trial in April of 1917. Susanna would head up to Detroit, making her way to Toronto, and eventually to Lackawanna, New York, where she gave birth to John Senti Prevost, the Pope Leo's uncle, on July 23, 1917. John's birth record is quite interesting as well because it gives a lot of false information, but includes just enough to be able to confidently identify that this is the correct family. No records have been discovered yet about what happened at the trial, or even if the trial actually happened. But Daisy and Giovanni seem to have moved back in together by 1918 when Giovanni registers for the World War I draft and lists his place of residence as the same place as his wife, Daisy. This gave me the feeling that maybe Daisy even dropped the charges. Daisy and Giovanni were also enumerated together in the 1920 census on January 12, 1920, which at that time, Susanna was actually about 3 months pregnant with her second child, Louis, who's the Pope's father. We don't know how long Giovanni and Daisy stayed together. There doesn't seem to be any divorce papers that anyone's been able to find, so it's uncertain if they even got a divorce. But we know that by 1927, when Daisy applies for naturalization, she lists her husband's place as unknown. Daisy would die in 1939 in Chicago, but the details in her death certificate were a little odd, having known the story, and it's raised a few eyebrows with genealogists wondering, what does it actually mean? For one, her husband is listed as Joseph and her marital status is listed as widowed. But so far, no one's been able to find any records of Daisy being married to anybody else, so is Joseph a reference to Giovanni? And with her name being Daisy Rigatano on the death certificate, it makes it seem that it is unlikely that she ever got married and Joseph must be Giovanni. In 1940, Giovanni and Suzanne had to fill out alien registration forms. It is these forms which give us the concrete confirmation that John Prevost and Salvatore Giovanni Rigatano are the same person. It is also the first instance showing Giovanni and Suzanne as being married, including Suzanne being listed with the Prevost name. Kyle Beatty of Ancestry's Pro-Genealogists explained why these alien registration forms are so historically interesting.
Beginning in 1940, for anyone who was a foreign national of an enemy state, and like Italy or Germany or Japan, but then expanded after that to anyone who was not naturalized, would have one of these awesome AR2 forms. And it's very detailed and tells you, very importantly, when and where they arrived in the country, which can really help you overcome, something like a name change, where otherwise, searching for somebody under their original name in a passenger list can be really very time consuming if they change it significantly.
This research is far from over. Genealogists around the world are still working away to uncover more about the Pope's grandfather, as well as trace many other lines back much further. And if you know how to do genealogy research or some type of research that might actually help with this, you can actually get involved yourself, especially anyone that wants to join the Genealogy Discord server. And I'll also be linking down in the description box a whole bunch of releases from the various teams that have been working on this, so you can really see the in-depth work. And if you enjoyed this video and you want to see more genealogy stories, be sure to check out this video of mine right here. Thank you to my Patreon patrons and YouTube members.